Story 1. Ronald Marshall was a popular European safari guide who loved communicating with animals and sharing their experiences. He is popularly known as one of the leading animal experts in his country. However, he yearned to communicate with a lion, especially an indigenous African breed. So in 2001, he went with 3 adventure-loving friends to Africa for vacation. They contacted a local and experienced safari guide named Mensa in Africa. Mensa had spent years navigating the wilds, leading adventurous travelers on journeys of a lifetime. He was renowned in the continent for his deep understanding of wildlife and exceptional ability to track even the most elusive creatures. Ronald and his group of thrill-seekers arrived at the safari camp to meet Mensa, eager to explore the wilderness and witness the majestic beasts that roamed freely. Ronald had heard tales of Mensa's daring encounters with lions, so he traveled to experience it for himself. Ronald approached him to introduce himself as an expert safari guide and commend Mensa on his profession. He then asked the local guide to lead them to where the lions were, as he wanted to see them up close. Mensa regarded Ronald with a wise gaze and caution evident in his voice. He warned that he might be a guide in Europe, but getting close to lions is very dangerous, as they're wild creatures. However, Ronald was undeterred. He boasted about his feat with various wild animals, so why would a lion be different? Mensa sighed inwardly, but decided to take Ronald's desire seriously. He knew the risks involved, but hoped to use the opportunity to impart a valuable lesson about respecting nature's boundaries. Reluctantly, he agreed to organize a special expedition for Ronald, understanding that they would keep a safe distance from the lions. The group set out early the next morning, the safari jeep rumbling over dusty tracks as they ventured deeper into the heart of the savannah. The landscape transformed into a breathtaking panorama of feral beauty with every passing mile. Herds of zebras and antelopes grazed in the distance, and elephants lumbered gracefully through the grasslands. As the sun reached its zenith, they spotted the majestic creatures they sought, a pride of lions lazing in the shade of an acacia tree. The tourists gasped in awe at the sight, capturing photos to cherish the memory forever. Ronald, however, felt restless and wanted to move toward the animals. He beseeched Mensa to advance towards them, and after several hesitations, the local guide conceded while reminding Ronald that lions are wild animals and must respect their space. The jeep advanced slowly, inching closer to the pride. Ronald was thrilled, his heart pounding with adrenaline. The lions seemed undisturbed, yawning as they watched the humans approach. They were powerful and regal, exuding an authority that sent shivers down his spine. The jeep stopped at what Mensa deemed a safe distance. The tourists eagerly observed the lions, marveling at their beauty and grace. However, Ronald's thirst for adventure was far from quenched. Ignoring Mensa's warnings, he stepped out of the jeep, his heart set on an even closer encounter. He crept stealthily toward the lions, convinced he could establish a connection with these majestic creatures. Mensa's heart raced with concern as he watched Ronald's reckless behavior. He urged the others to remain in the vehicle, hoping Ronald's foolishness would not escalate into a dangerous situation. As Ronald approached, the lions became aware of his presence. Their amber eyes locked onto him, assessing the intruder. Mensa's heart sank, knowing that this confrontation could end in tragedy. He called out to Ronald to come back and even honked at him, but Ronald was too enthralled to heed the warning. He continued to inch closer to the lions with an audacious smile. He believed he had a mystical connection with these animals, a bond that would protect him from harm. Suddenly, one of the lions sprang to his feet with lightning speed. His muscles ripped with power as he emitted a low growl, a clear warning to the daring intruder. Ronald froze, realizing too late the gravity of his impulsive decision. Mensa's anxiety increased as he watched the events unfold. He had seen the savagery of lions before, and knew that Ronald's life hung in the balance. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Mensa reached for his radio, calling for backup from the lodge. In a tense standoff, Ronald's friends watched in horrified silence, as the lion paced, eyeing Ronald as his prey. While waiting for backup, Mensa knew something bad might happen before their arrival, so he kept his composure and observed. Seconds later, the lion raced towards Ronald, about to lunge at him. In the spur of the moment, Mensa started the vehicle and drove towards the lion. He was lucky to hit the lion before it could bite into terrified Ronald. Before the pride of the lion could charge at them, the others pulled Ronald into the vehicle, and Mensa galloped away. Ronald had turned pale, and his bravado was replaced by humility and gratitude at the second chance he had been granted. Back at the lodge, Mensa sat him down and lectured him about the importance of humility and understanding the boundaries between man and the wild. Ronald just kept nodding with remorse, saying he should have listened to Mensa. The lion wasn't injured much and finally lived thanks to adequate treatment. Ronald went back to Europe with more experience in safari and nature. He began using his story as cautionary tales to raise awareness among tourists whenever they visit. Story 2. There lived a talented young nature photographer in South Australia named Laura Jones, renowned for her breathtaking natural images. Having spent most of her time in Victoria, she had taken all pictures of animals and nature in her area. So she wanted a new environment. This time, she was going to America. In the summer of 1999, she flew to the USA. On getting to the vast national park in Texas, known for its breathtaking landscapes and diverse wildlife, Laura clung to her camera as she embarked on the solo trip to capture the raw beauty of nature. As dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold the day after her arrival, Laura set out on her adventure with a hired four-wheel drive, navigating the rugged terrain with ease. The morning air carried the scent of wilderness, and she felt excited to encounter magnificent creatures in their natural habitat. Laura deeply respected the animals she sought to photograph, and believed in capturing their essence without disturbing their lives. So as she drove through the park, she made a conscious effort to maintain a respectful distance from the wildlife, often relying on her telephoto lens to get those perfect shots. The day progressed, and Laura had already captured breathtaking images of graceful antelopes leaping through the grasslands, and majestic elephants bathing in a nearby watering hole. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that more was to be seen. Determined to seize the opportunity, she explored a lesser-known part of the park. As the sun reached its zenith, Laura was surrounded by an awe-inspiring stretch of savanna, the golden grass swaying in the gentle breeze. She rolled down her window, feeling the warm air against her skin and the earthy scent of the wilderness filling her lungs. It was a moment of pure serenity. Just as she was about to drive on, her intuition prompted her to stay a little longer, as she saw a rare swift parrot. This species of parrot is extinct in Australia, so she wanted to show people at home. She adjusted her camera settings, hoping to capture a stunning photograph of this bird in every possible position. Little did she know that this split-second decision would change the course of her day and possibly her life. Without warning, a deep, resonant roar shattered the moment's tranquility. Laura's heart skipped a beat as she looked around, trying to discern the source of the powerful sound. Then in the corner of her eye, she saw him, the king of the savannah, a lion emerging from the tall grass. Laura's excitement was visible as her fingers trembled with anticipation, while raising her camera to capture this incredible sight. With each click of the shutter, she immortalized the lion's untamed beauty, his amber eyes piercing through her lens and into her soul. Lost in the moment's wonder, Laura didn't realize that her vehicle had been slowly inching closer to the lion. She momentarily forgot the rules of the wild, with her desire to get the perfect shot overpowering her common sense. She leaned out of the window to get a clearer view, and in that instant, the lion noticed her sudden movement, and the atmosphere changed in an instant. With an explosive burst of energy, the lion charged toward the vehicle. Its massive frame was thundering across the savannah. Laura tried to retreat, but it was too late. The lion reached the car in seconds, his wild instincts overpowering any sense of human familiarity. He lunged at the open window, and his powerful claw stored into Laura's arm. A piercing pain shot through her body as she felt the lion's claw scratch into her flesh. Her camera dropped from her hand, abandoned in the moment's chaos. She retreated into the car and moved to the other seat to escape the beast's menace. Fortunately, the lion could not enter through the window, so he circled the vehicle, waiting for any chance. Being fragile, Laura could not start the vehicle due to the pain. She pressed the car horn repeatedly until the park ranger rescued her. The ranger distracts the lion and returns it to its enclosure before rescuing Laura. An ambulance was called immediately, and she was rushed to the nearest medical facility for treatment. Fortunately, her injuries were not life-threatening, but the emotional scars from the encounter ran deep. News of the photographer's near-fatal encounter spread like wildfire in the following weeks. The incident sparked a necessary conversation about wildlife photography ethics and the importance of respecting the boundaries of nature. For Laura, the encounter was a humbling reminder of the feral power and unpredictability of the wild. She was affected emotionally and vowed never to walk close to any animal again. The lion that had attacked her was tranquilized and relocated to a more remote part of the national park, far from human settlements, where he could roam freely without endangering people or himself. After several months in the hospital undergoing counseling, Laura could return to normal and return to her passion for photography. This time, she embraced a new perspective. She stopped taking pictures of wild animals but changed to nature-like landscapes and gardens. All her wildlife photos were auctioned off to prevent remembrance of the near-death incident with the lion. Story 3. In 1995, a man named Than Nhu lived in the bustling streets of Hanoi, Vietnam. He was a professional cobbler, yet an adventurous soul, always seeking new experiences and yearning to explore the unknown. After visiting almost every tourist attraction in his country, Than embarked on a long journey that would take him across continents to Africa's wild, untamed heart. He had heard of the African lion as a symbol of courage and strength, and even had a tattoo of one on his chest and various portraits in his room. After months of saving and planning, Than boarded a plane and traveled thousands of miles to the national park in Tanzania. The vast savannas and diverse wildlife left him in awe as he arrived at the park's entrance. Than couldn't wait to witness the majestic creatures of Africa up close. With a guided tour booked, Than set out on a jeep safari. His excitement was palpable as the vehicle navigated the rough terrain, bringing him closer to nature's wonders. Along the way, he spotted graceful giraffes nibbling on acacia leaves, playful elephants splashing in a watering hole, and dazzling zebras moving in harmonious patterns. As the sun set, the tour guide announced it was time to return to the campsite. But Than, thirsty for adventure and craving an authentic encounter with the wildlife, asked the guide if he could spend more time inside the park. The guide hesitated, cautioning Than about the dangers of staying out too late. However, after noticing the glimmer of determination in Than's eyes, he reluctantly agreed, providing strict instructions to stay within the designated areas and never to leave the jeep. Left alone in the vastness of the safari, Than felt a sense of freedom he had never experienced before. The cool African breeze brushed against his face, and he marveled at the beauty of the stars that adorned the night sky. Driven by the desire to make most of this rare opportunity, Than decided to venture into a more remote part of the park. He believed that staying close to the jeep would limit his chances of encountering any wildlife, and he wished to witness the captivating beauty of Africa without barriers. As Than roamed the savannah on foot, he felt excitement and trepidation. His heart pounded in his chest as he listened to the distant roars of lions that echoed through the night. He reminded himself that he was just a visitor in this ancient land and needed to respect the animal's territory. Unbeknownst to Than, his curiosity led him closer to one of the park's lion enclosures. Inside the enclosure, a pride of lions was settling down after a day of hunting, their golden eyes keenly observing their surroundings. Lost in the beauty of the night, Than failed to notice the warning signs that marked the boundary of the enclosure. He stepped over an invisible line, unintentionally intruding on the lion's territory. As he wandered further into the enclosure, The silence of the night was interrupted by a low, guttural growl. Than froze, realizing his grave mistake. Panic set in, and he attempted to retrace his steps, but it was too late. The mighty king of the pride emerged from the shadows, a massive male lion with a majestic mane and a piercing gaze. Than's heart raced as he met the lion's eyes and knew he was at the mercy of the wild. With a sudden burst of speed, the lion lunged at Than, its powerful jaws closing around his arm. Than screamed in agony as he felt the crushing force of the lion's bite. He fought desperately to break free, but the lion's grip was unrelenting. Fortunately, the tour guide realized Than hadn't returned to the campsite, so he came back to search for him with two of his colleagues. As the guide saw Than's jeep with the door wide open, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. During that moment, Than let out another agonizing cry. The jeep's headlights cut through the darkness as the guides drive nearer. Sensing the ray, the lion released its grip and retreated into the shadows. The guide and his team rushed to Than's aid, pulling him to safety and administering first aid to his wounds. With his heart pounding and adrenaline coursing through his veins, Than was grateful for the timely rescue. His encounter with the wild had taught him a profound lesson about the importance of respecting nature's boundaries. Back at the campsite, Than was treated for his injuries and given a stern but compassionate lecture by the tour guide. It was a harsh reminder of the consequences that could arise from recklessness and the need to embrace nature's wonders responsibly. As Than returned to Vietnam, he carried physical and emotional scars from his African adventure. But with time, these wounds healed, and he found a newfound appreciation for life and the world's beauty. He continued to embrace his adventurous spirit, but approached it with newfound caution and wisdom, because the lesson learned was in a hard way. Being high-spirited, Than didn't feel traumatized by the incident, despite having the beast tattoo on him. He narrated the story to anyone who cared to hear it in his neighborhood. Story 4. Akanji Obafemi was a 23-year-old man from a southwestern village in Nigeria. Being a good hunter, he was known for his courage and determination, always seeking to prove his hunting prowess in the eyes of his fellow hunters and the villagers. One bright morning, with the sun casting its golden glow upon the land, Akanji set out on his hunting adventure. He greeted his fellow villagers warmly before disappearing into the dense forest. With each step, he felt a sense of calm and a connection with the wilderness around him. Armed with his Dane gun and dagger tucked deep in its sheath, Akanji walked along the well-known path with his senses keenly attuned to the sounds and movements of the forest. The forest came alive with the sound of wildlife, the gentle rustling of leaves and distant cries of exotic birds filling the air. Undeterred by the eerie atmosphere, Akanji pressed on, eager to track down his prey. Hours passed, and Akanji's footsteps grew heavier with fatigue. He had not encountered any game yet and wondered if luck was not on his side that day. Determined not to return empty-handed, he continued his quest, his senses heightened in search of any sign of life. Fortunately, he spotted two rodents darting through the undergrowth. Without hesitation, he steadied his aim and skillfully took down both creatures with a single shot from his Dane gun. Pleased with his catch, Akanji ventured deeper into the forest for a bigger game. His instincts told him that the forest held more than just rodents that day. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched as he trod carefully but brushed it off as mere nerves. It was then that he noticed a faint rustling in the bushes ahead. Instinctively, he crouched low, his heart racing with anticipation. Slowly and silently, Akanji inched his way forward, his eyes fixed on the source of the sound. Suddenly, with an explosive burst of energy, a massive lion leaped from the bushes, its powerful paws landing squarely on Akanji's chest. The force of the attack knocked him to the ground, the breath stolen from his lungs as he grappled with the fierce predator. Fear surged through Akanji's veins, but he knew he had to fight for his life. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled strength, he pushed against the lion's weight, using every ounce of his willpower to keep the deadly jaws away from his throat. The struggle was intense. The lion's hot breath washed over Akanji's face as he fought to gain the upper hand. Time seemed to slow as they battled, each moment stretching into an eternity of life or death determination. Akanji managed to reach for the dagger from its sheath with a desperate maneuver. He unleashed it with his fingers closed around the hilt, and with a surge of hope, he plunged the blade into the lion's side. The beast roared in pain, but didn't release its grip yet. The lion was about to gather its strength and strike back, but Akanji was lucky enough to plunge a well-aimed thrust into the lion's side. The beast let out a roar of pain, and its grip on Akanji loosened. Seizing the opportunity, Akanji pushed the lion away and scrambled to his feet, panting and bruised but alive. He's ready to defend himself if the lion decides to attack again, but the lion fell dead. Akanji stood there, catching his breath, his body aching seriously from the fight. Yet he felt an overwhelming sense of triumph. He had faced death in its fiercest form and emerged victorious. Gathering all his strength, Akanji knew he had to return to his village. With his gun strapped to his back and dagger tucked into his pocket, Akanji tried dragging the lion to the village, but it was near impossible due to the massive injury sustained from the attack. Fortunately, a fellow hunter just going for his expedition saw him in agony and helped him with the beast after ensuring it was dead. The hunter even slit open its throat to avoid any mishap. The villagers' jaws dropped in astonishment and pride as they saw Akanji and the other hunter emerge from the forest, victorious and carrying the lion that had tried to claim him. Everyone knew from the way that he was badly bruised that he was the one that fought with the Jungle King. Also, they witnessed the other hunter entering the forest some minutes ago. His encounter spread like wildfire, and the villagers marveled at his bravery and survival skills. From that day, Akanji was celebrated as a hero in his village. He symbolized resilience and determination, inspiring the younger generations to face life's challenges with courage and a never-give-up spirit. The lion's pelt was used as a symbol of protection for the village, hanging in a place of honor for all to see. Others in the region sought after Akanji's reputation as a hunter who reached legendary status, and for him to share his knowledge and skills. But deep down, he remained humble, knowing that his survival was as much about luck and courage as his skills as a hunter. Though he nurtured the injuries sustained from the brawl for months, Akanji achieved his dream of proving himself as a hunter.